Welcome back to my channel. Um, Today we're going to have a go at a painting. You see the picture we've got up here now. We're going to recreate this painting. I did this a couple of years ago, I think, and I just pulled it up from my sort of reference stuff and thought we could have a go at painting it today. I don't have a photograph for it, but we'll actually be painting it from the sketch, the painting. I'm not going to. It's going to be pretty much the same. I'm not going to slavishly follow it. I'm just going to try and get the same sort of feel from it. I was really pleased with this painting. I do like the feel. It's very loose and it's very impressionistic, I suppose. It's a nice composition. I think the composition works well. So we're going to try and. It probably won't be quite as detailed as that. I want to simplify it. I want to keep it around about, I don't know, 30 minutes or so. I don't want to be spending too long on it, so it'll be maybe a bit more simplified than this, geared towards people that are just sort of beginning in watercolour, maybe sort of quite simple steps to follow. So hopefully be able to paint along with me and have a go. We'll start off by drawing the scene out, and then we'll progress on to painting it in watercolour. Okay, then we're going to start off by just drawing out or using the reference image, the sketch, as our starting point. I'm a bit ahead of myself here, but I'm kind of just sort of measuring the distances between certain places on the painting. Just to make sure I get the right proportions and everything. I'm not worrying about any detail or anything like that. I'm just sort of penciling in the overall shape, the shapes of the buildings and everything. I'm not worrying too much about detail. Goes the door. I'm using, for those who might be interested, I'm using a 3B pencil, so it's not too soft and it doesn't leave too black a line. Actually, when I'm actually painting watercolour, sometimes I quite like to see pencil lines underneath. It doesn't really bother me personally. I know some people don't like it, but I quite like seeing a little bit of drawing through the watercolour. For me, it can work quite nicely. And this is a place in Cornwall. I think it's called Mullion Cove in Cornwall. I've done several paintings of this. I've got a couple more I'm going to do and do as tutorials, which I haven't done before, of Mullion Cove. So there'll be a couple more coming. So if you're interested in learning how to paint boats and that type of thing, then this is going to be a good few demonstrations for you. There's a few people have asked me when I'm going to be. I've just got back from a trip to Thailand and Vietnam. I've had a few people ask me when I'm going to be doing demonstrations of demos of the different photos I took and sketches and stuff. I will be doing them in the next few weeks. It's just that I just fancy a change, and I've been away for like near on 6 weeks, 7 weeks, and I know there are people out there, especially on YouTube, who want to me to go back and do a few of my older stuff as well. So I'll be concentrating on a lot of my Cornwall work for the next couple of weeks, and then I'll move more onto the stuff that I did when I was away in Vietnam. So I'm just going to speed the pencil sketch bit up now, and then we'll slow it down when I get to where we're going to be doing the painting. There we go. Actually, we'll just talk about this bit a minute. Just putting the boats in. Again, we're just looking for the overall shape. I'm doing little dots so I can measure between the different areas to get the right proportions. I'm painting this on Ocher watercolour paper. The paper is £140 in weight, and it's what's called a knot surface. So it's got a nice surface to it, so you can leave dry brush marks behind if you want to use that technique, which I will be in this painting, I think. It's a lovely paper to paint on. It's not the cheapest of watercolour papers, but it's a good one to paint on. You know, you can get very good results on cheaper paper. You don't have to spend out too much really. But I've been using Ocher now for years, and I think you get used to one paper, and I tend to stick with it. We're just putting the last bits of the boat. Okay, I'll speed this up now a little bit towards the end, and then we'll slow it down when I get to the painting stage. Okay then, it's all drawn out and we're ready to start painting. This is my little mister bottle that I use to just dampen the paper a little bit to start with. So I'm just going to spray the paper lightly. I just find it helps. It's not really wet, it's just a bit of moisture on the page to help the paint flow a little bit. I'm going to start off with the sky, and for that I've got a mixture of cobalt blue and some cerulean blue. Already. I'm just going to add a touch of light red to the cobalt blue, just to grey it out slightly. Not a lot, just a little bit. And there we go. I'm just painting around a cloud there. I'm using about a 1-inch flat brush. Okay, I'm just adding a little bit of magenta to the sky there. I'm just softening edges with the brush. A little bit more magenta and a little bit of yellow ochre to the sky, just to give the clouds a nice sort of warm appearance, sort of brighten them up a bit. I'm not worrying about going over the edges of things, like I'm going over the sides of the clouds. A bit of blue at the bottom. There's a little bit of land back there, you can see it on the sketch, but which I'll put in later, a little landmass in the distance. I'm just adding some yellow ochre and a bit of light red to the building, just to warm the stone up, painting around the windows. And there's just the rocks there. I'm just painting with a mixture of yellow ochre, light red and a touch of cobalt blue in places. I'm adding more cobalt blue now to the mix, just to vary it a bit so the colours aren't all the same. And I'll work with those three colours now for most of the stonework, the rocks and the granity stone that's around there. Adding a little bit of green here, there's a little bit of grass down on the side, being careful to paint around the boat. And for that I've just used a little bit of cobalt blue and a little bit of lemon yellow. Pop a little bit of blue in the windows and doors. Just leaving some small bits of white here and there as highlights, especially in the window. Okay, now I'm just doing the foreground. And again, that's just a mixture of cobalt blue, a touch of red, and yellow ochre in various proportions, just to give a nice varied sort of surface to the ground there. So it's not all one flat colour, it's a mixture of colours, of sort of bluey, browny, grey colours. And I haven't changed brushes yet, I'm still working with the, I think it's an inch flat brush. You've also got to remember when you're actually painting, your colours will dry a lot lighter than when they're wet. They dry, I don't know, probably 25% lighter, maybe a bit more. But so you've got to always paint a little bit darker than you think you'll need. This is just the first wash, we're just tinting the page with this. We're getting rid of all that white paper, take the pressure off a little bit. I'm just adding a bit of brown in there, that's the key in the distance. There's a little key there. So I'm using a really straightforward, simple palette of colours here. I'm not using many colours at all. In a minute I'll paint the sea in there, and for that I'll use Viridian with a touch of lemon yellow maybe, and a touch of blue, cobalt blue or cerulean blue. There we go, mix the colour up, just popping it in. It's quite bright, the sea, maybe a little bit too bright, I don't know, but it will dry back. When it dries it will be okay, and when I've done the rest of the painting it should look okay. But sometimes you get these lovely turquoise sea in Cornwall. It's absolutely beautiful. It looks like the Caribbean. Unfortunately it doesn't feel like the Caribbean. It's generally pretty cold. I'll just lighten the mix here a little bit in the foreground, not so bright. You know, again I'm still working with the same brush. Okay then, so now I'm just using a mix of cobalt blue and a touch of cad red to paint the distant landmass. So it's just going to be like a grey blue colour, and by doing that, by keeping it cool, you make it look like it's further away. The warmer the colours, the closer they are to you, the closer they'll appear to you. So if you want something to look like it's in the distance, you use a cooler colour, a blue, or you make a grey, that type of colour. And I'm just painting the roof of the cottage. I'm just using the same mix of colour, a bit of cobalt blue, a bit of yellow ochre and a bit of cadmium red, just for the roof of the cottage, and that's trying to sort of capture the kind of slate colour of the tiles on the roof. I'm just painting, adding a little bit of red for the chimney. It's just a question now of working my way down through across the cottage again, adding another layer of colour. This bit's quite slow because you've got to paint around the windows. Right, I think I'm looking forward to getting on to painting the boats at this stage. I'm just putting a little bit of green, a darker wash of green, a little bit more blue in it just for the shadow on the grass, just to make it a bit richer in colour. I'm not trying to paint blades of grass or anything silly like that. It's all just about blocking in shapes really and making the shapes convincing. Now this is like, there's like a cliff face that butts up against the side of the cottage there. So here I'm just using again a pretty much a darker mix of the previous wash, which was yellow ochre, cobalt blue and some light red. And I'm just kind of using it in various proportions to pull out the different shadows in the rocks. So instead of thinking they're rocks and painting it that way, I just look at the shapes that are made by the rocks and then just paint in the shadows accordingly. Sometimes it kind of it goes its own way a little bit, and which is fine. You just run with it, and it should all work out fine. Just adding some darker greens to the grassy area at the bottom. Just almost just little blobs of colour really. Again, it's just adding some more darks now to the key area. So basically these areas are getting two washes, aren't they? Because I did the initial wash, which was the yellow ochre, light red and cobalt blue mix, various mixes of that. And then I'm going back in now to add another wash of slightly darker colour. So after that it's kind of left alone. Apart from any detail you might need to draw in with a brush, the actual block of colour is left alone. It's just a question of, you don't want to be going back and back and back over washes, because what happens if you do that, they lose their luminosity and they become dead and flat looking. So you only want to really go back over a couple of times. There are other techniques where glazing you can do it more, but you've got to be using transparent colours and really know what you're doing. But if you're using semi-opaque colours and you're mixing colours, 2 or 3 colours, if you keep going back over them, the colours will become dead very quickly and your paint will end up looking muddy and drab. Just painting around the window panes in with a little bit of cobalt blue and light red. Painted under the eaves of the cottage where the shadows are. So for this painting I've kind of used, what colours did I use? I used Viridian, cobalt blue, cerulean blue, lemon yellow, touch of magenta, cadmium red. Oh, excuse me. What else? That's about it, I think. Yellow ochre. So about 7 or 8 colours for this painting. What I'll do at the end, I'll put a list of what colours I used at the end of the video, in case you want to have a go at painting along yourself, which would be great if you do. And if you do have a go at painting along, think about coming to our website. We've got a free members area where you can come and join in. We've got lots of very experienced artists there that paint brilliantly, and they support each other and they show each other their current work and what they've been doing. So if you have a go at painting it, come along and upload it to the site, to the painting forum, and somebody will be there if you need advice or you want help, or just you want to know what people think of it. A general critique in, then people will come along and do that. So it's and there's a link to the website in the description of the video. So I'm just painting the boat in now. I'm just using a bit of cerulean blue there for the hull colour, and for where the anti-fouling is at the bottom, I just use some light red colour, just a light red. Or you could use burnt sienna. Any colour like that would be okay. And if you need to cool it down, just drop a little bit of blue in, a little bit of cobalt blue in, or ultramarine blue. One of my viewers left a question the other day asking me what I thought about using ultramarine in skies, and I have to. He said that that he didn't get along with it and it didn't work for him, and I have to agree. Very rarely do I use ultramarine in the skies. I know a lot of people do, and it seems to work okay for some people. But for me, I find it's too bright and it looks a bit sort of electric blue, if you know what I mean. So I tend to not use. I tend to stick with cobalt blue and cerulean. So just going around the boat now, sort of painting in the boat. And when I get the shadows in on the boats will come alive. They'll have more that 3D dimensional feel to them. At the moment they look very flat. And I've mixed this dark up with just a bit of burnt sienna and cobalt blue. Makes a nice sort of warm sort of black, but it's not black. You see, if you had a tube of black in your set, which I wouldn't have personally, and you painted it black, it would look really dead and dull. So there's no need to have those tubes really, because you can mix all those colours easily enough yourself. I've got several videos which show you how to mix darks on YouTube, so just have a hunt around and you'll find those, and they show you how to mix all the dark colours. And I've just mixed some brown for the anti-fouling on the boat. And when I start putting the shadows in, then hopefully it'll come alive. Now don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video and you feel you've got something from it, please subscribe and become a member of my channel, because there'll be more videos uploaded frequently. And if you liked it, give it a thumbs up as well, and leave a comment if you want to if you've got something to say, just feel free to leave a comment and I'll do my best to get back to you. I can't reply to all comments because I often miss a few, but I do my best to. Every week I have a go through them all and respond. But it's great to hear what you've got to say, and if you leave a question, like I say, I'll do my best to answer it. So there you go, you put a few shadows in and things start to come to life. And for the shadows I'm just using cobalt blue and a touch of magenta. I wanted those shadows to look quite sort of glow. I didn't want them to look too dead, too neutral. So I used magenta so it looked brighter, the shadows. I'm just putting in the ropes, just suggesting those. Tether the boats up, moor the boats up. I'm just suggesting some little rocks in the foreground. Again, when you're painting things like rocks in the foreground, try not to make them too evenly spaced and uniform. Be as random as you can, because often you'll see people that, when they're starting up, they paint things like, I don't know, hills in the distance, and they're equally spaced and they're all the same shape, and it's not how it should be really. They need to be more random. And this is just one of the buoys, the fenders on the boat, and I'm just using a bit of light red and magenta to paint those in. Excuse me. Just adding some little bits of darker colour, some details. You know, there's things there, but I'm not thinking to paint them in any detail, just suggesting it. Just to make it more interesting, really. I'm having to do the commentary on this video afterwards because I lost the audio when I made the video. I don't know what happened. Just putting a little bit more darker colour on that side of the boat, so, because it's in shadow. And again, that was just a question of mixing up a thicker, darker mix of cobalt blue and burnt sienna. You know, when you're starting out painting, it's all about just getting on and giving it a go. Don't be intimidated by the white paper. You've got nothing to lose, and just to sort of, you know, paint and not worry what the result's going to be. The less you worry about what the end result's going to be, the better it will be. If you're too paranoid about doing a fantastic painting, then generally it turns out pretty poor, because you'll be too careful, you'll be too restricted in your movements and your brush strokes. So it's better just to kind of like have a bit of a carefree attitude about it. And I often find if the more carefree I am and the relaxed I am, the better the result. You know, this is quite a quick painting. This has taken me kind of 30 minutes from start to finish. So it's relative. It's just a sketch. You know, you could spend a lot longer over it. Still aiming for the loose feel, but you could spend, you know, 2 or 3 hours painting this painting, and a lot more carefully and choosing much more interesting colours. But the idea of this exercise was just to show you how we could turn, you know, my original sketch, how I painted it, and how you can make a nice little painting from it. So I just put more shadow in the rocks there. And again, that's just a darker mix of yellow ochre, burnt sienna, a touch of burnt sienna at this time, and cobalt blue. And there's just a little wall coming down here, and I'm just suggesting the different shapes of rocks in it, stones in it. It's just a wall that's built up behind the boats there. And I'm just doing dabs of colour to suggest the different shapes of the rocks in the wall. And as you start getting the final darks in, the whole painting does tend to come to life a bit. Good thing with watercolour painting is you can sit down. You might only have an hour a day to spend, or an hour a week to spend on your painting, but once you get pretty competent with it, you can sit down and produce a nice painting, a pleasing piece of work, in one session. If you've got an hour, you can, you know, 30 minutes in this case, you can sit down and produce the painting pretty quickly, and to a standard I think you'd be pleased with. So you don't have to spend kind of like hours poring over it. You can kind of like produce something quite quickly. I'm just doing a little bit of splattering now in the foreground, just to add a bit more detail. Good old splattering is always worth doing. It makes your painting look really loose. But be careful when you do the splattering that you don't splatter the sky as well. So try and have a little bit of control about it, because there's nothing more annoying if you start getting black splatters in the sky. It can kind of ruin everything. Just adding a little bit of darker colour to the sea. Just a little bit of cobalt blue, Viridian, and a touch of magenta to that to neutralise it a bit. Just gives that idea of deeper water. Now in a minute I've got to put, there's like a kind of stamps, this is like a pot hauler that's on the side of the boat, and I'm just painting that in. And again, you know, I'm just painting the shape. I'm not thinking it's a pot hauler, a pot hauler. Was it? You know, I'm not worrying about all the complexities of what those look like. I'm just painting the actual overall shape of it. There's the shadows on the fenders on the buoys. You know, I was saying about how much lighter the paint dries. If you go back to the beginning where I painted the foreground, it was so much darker and brighter when it was wet, and I didn't have the darker colours around it. But now I've added darker colours around the foreground, and it's dried. It's really a very light colour. So I reckon that's probably dried nearly 50% lighter. We're just adding the last little bits of detail now, and we're nearly done. So if you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment. You know, giving us a thumbs up really helps as well with my videos, so I really appreciate that. And thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope the commentary wasn't too boring, because it's always harder doing it after you've actually finished painting the painting. You find yourself rambling a bit. But I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. I'll just let you watch the last little bits without any commentary. Bye for now.